Oh, looks like she's already requested, so let's get into this. Live.
You.
Well, well, hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you again.
You too.
Definitely.
Wasn't that long. I seen you a little while ago, right? At the
It was like
birthday.
a year ago.
Was it? Oh my God. Time is not a concept in COVID. Like,
Yeah. Moves fast.
yeah, damn. Lord of mercy.
Well, cool. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Leeds Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by Brand Nation Media, Lifted Productions, Barbertime, Chubby, Chic. We have MC, singer, poet, and activist Jazzmyn Red. Did I get them all?
Yeah. Well, newly, ambassador of hip hop to the
Ambassador.
United States. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. We'll talk about that now since you brought it up. You are going to the Middle East, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
And you're flying out there. What exactly are you doing out there?
So what the program is, it's called Next Level, and it's through the U.S. State Department. And I actually got put on to it by one of the folks I grew up with, who is a phenomenal MC and DJ, Corey James Gray. He did it a few years ago, and I saw him, was like, how do I get down with this? Like, how do I do this? So basically, what we do is it's all about diplomacy. And we go to another country. This is their 8th year doing this. So every year they send out a bunch of different teams comprised of the elements of hip hop. So I'll be going as an MC representative. I also have Brown Jewel, who's going to be joining me as a producer. I have Artist, who's going to be joining me as a DJ. And I have Aaron from out here in Boston, who's going to be joining me as a b-boy, a breakdancer. So we go out. We're actually going to be at the Berkeley School of Music campus in Abu Dhabi, and we're going to be teaching classes based on our craft and our element of hip hop. And it all kind of gears up to a show that we put on for the community with our students. So right now it looks like we might be doing our show at the Palladium in Dubai, which is huge. They usually do shows anywhere from 600 people to 6,000 people. And then we also do, offshoot workshops within the community too. So we'll be kind of going out into the community when we're not teaching classes and maybe doing ciphers with folks, all sorts of different things. So I'm really excited about it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
There's a Berkeley and a Palladium in the Middle East.
Right? Right? Exactly.
That's
And I actually found out yesterday that the folks at Berkeley, took a look at my bio that you just read off, some of my titles, and they saw that I sing. So I'll be doing some vocal coaching there too, not only as an MC, but as a vocal coach at Berkeley, Abu Dhabi. So very exciting.
wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Well, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was shocked when Lisa told me the other day when I thought you were actually moving out there.
Oh.
Because she didn't say it was a temporary thing. She's like, she's going out to the Middle East and teaching all this stuff. I was like, oh, that sounds like a job. Like she's going
Yeah.
out there to move. And I'm like, wow.
Well, yeah, I'll be out there for a while though. I leave November 2nd, and then I'm not coming back until the end of November. So I'll be out there for a month or so. And they it's pretty cool because not only do you get paid as a resident artist, but they also they pay for your flights, they pay for your lodging, they pay for your meals. So it's all inclusive. We go there as resident artists and teachers, and it's a really great program. I encourage anybody who is represents one of the elements of hip hop and has some experience with teaching it to definitely apply, because I applied the first year. I didn't get it. I was like, all right, cool, fine. But I decided to apply one more time, and I got it. And so now I'm out. Now I'm off to the UAE.
Do you have a teaching background?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, cool. What is that?
So I actually graduated in 2015 from college with my degree in communications and Black History, Africana Studies. I started out as a history teacher in Brockton public schools. I taught like civics, I taught Black history, and then I also taught the other chapters of history through like a multiracial kind of lens. And then from there, I've actually been working with Big Brothers Big Sisters for the past 5 years now. I was a college and career teacher with them. So like we worked on, basically I started with my students in the 9th grade and brought them all the way up to graduation, and like just kind of helping them figure out like what they want to do and where they want to go. And now I actually work in the diversity inclusion section of Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I'm not technically teaching anymore, but even in the summertime, I've always taught like history of hip hop, elements of hip hop. I usually teach hip hop through the lens of being a child of like the civil rights movement and how it developed like pretty much after the civil rights movement had come to like a halt because of, you know, we won't get into it because I just keep going, but that's my teaching background. It's history, hip hop, and college and career.
That's great. And you were in, so you're from Brockton, correct?
Yeah, I'm from the South Shore, like the Brockton Taunton area.
Yeah. Okay. So I was reading that you grew up there and you moved 15 times in 25 years.
Yes.
I moved 3 times in my childhood, and that was more than enough. I can't imagine. What was that like, moving 15 times, and why?
Yeah, we moved a lot. You know, I started here in Mass, you know, and I had moved around a couple of places like within the vicinity of like Taunton, Rainham area. And then my mom actually moved us to New York for a little while because she was going to college. So we moved a couple times there. I stayed, you know, relatively in the same school system. So I think that made it really easy. But then we came back. And again, like we just were always like moving into different places. Like I'm actually, you know, the place that I've been at right now, I've been here for quite a while. And like we're starting to make it look like a house.
I gotta say, when you've moved 15 times in 25 years, what's a while? Is that like a year?
No, like yeah, this is the longest place I've been, and I believe I've been here 6 years. So this is the longest place I've been at. I've been here 6 years, but I'm looking to buy a house, so I'm moving soon again. Once the market isn't insane.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But yeah, you know, I always felt like I was very much rooted in Taunton and Brockton because that's where my family was. And really, like my family is what continued to like make me feel like I had roots. Like the places that I lived. You know, and moving from house to house, like it was definitely tough to like, you never really set up shop anywhere, right? Like there's always boxes still of like stuff because we didn't unpack a lot of things. And relatively we were at a place for like a year to 2 years. But, you know, I always felt rooted like in this area because my family was here and they stayed in relatively the same places. So like, you know, there's an apartment complex out here that's like, it's home to me. Like I never lived there personally, but like my grandmother and my aunts lived there. And so like, that's my home. Like that's my roots, you know?
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you kind of grew up with this dual thing of your dad being in the streets and your mother being college educated.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that chemistry makeup, because that's an interesting chemistry.
Yeah, so my dad is awesome, but my dad is hood. Like that's just who he is. You know what I'm saying? And my mom, on the other hand, you know, she was a paralegal for like 25 years. So I have a dad who's like in the streets
still
doing this stuff, and then I have a mom who's a paralegal. You know what I'm saying? Like he worked a lot of labor jobs too. So you know, like. I remember he used to do like scaffolding and like we'd bring him to work and like it would be like these huge like scaffolding like buildings in like Boston, and I'm like, oh my God, like you walk on that? Like what? But yeah, so, you know, between the two of them, you know, my mom studied political science in college. And so through her experience, through the lens of, you know, political science and understanding like civics and government, I really had this like teacher in the house with me who was talking to me about current events and who was talking to me about what's going on in the world. And like on the flip side of that, I had an experience as a biracial child who, you know, going to a predominantly white school presented like a brown girl, like, you know what I'm saying? I had a very racially charged childhood because of the school system that I went to, which just so happened to be the same school system that my dad went to. And it was also very racially charged. So on the other side of like kind of understanding the dynamics of like culture and society and civics and, you know, understanding terms like oppression and then like experiencing it, and then having my dad's side of being a Black man in America, I think it really fueled me to look at the world through a critical lens at a young age and like really think about my experiences and how there are people everywhere that are experiencing some of these same things, and I have a way that I can articulate it and I can talk about it and I can say something or do something. So it was really an interesting like upbringing as far as like learning about the world through kind of these two different lenses. And they really just came together like in me. And I think that my music translates a lot of that, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a broad spectrum.
Yes, absolutely. And my dad rapped too. So it was like, I picked that right on up. Like at 7 years old, like, you know, he
so
rapped.
the music side comes from his side, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. And my mom's side is actually really musically inclined too.
Oh,
so,
good.
She, you know, has always danced. My relatives on that side, like, you know, play instruments and sing. Same as on my dad's side, a lot of rappers, a lot of singers, producers. So it really just came at me from like all sides. So I like had this like very conscious upbringing mixed with like music. And so that's kind of what you see now, right? Like that's just who I am.
Right. I want to talk about Brockton in general because it's kind of like an outskirt of Boston. It's kind of like south. It's 30 minutes south of Boston, maybe a little more. I don't know.
Yep.
And it seems like it was kind of like thrown under the radar for a while, but now it seems like there's a lot of music coming out of Brockton. I mean, I'm seeing a bunch of stuff come out of there, which I had not seen since I had moved to Boston in a while. I saw a couple things come out of Brockton, but nothing was really. You know, for the first 10 years of my career, I didn't hear of anybody. I only heard of one group, Ball Club, Shut Up Ball Club, for Brockton, and that was it. Yeah. You know? So talk about the music scene in Brockton and what it's become and how it's developed.
The funny thing is, I love that you say that because this was the first music scene that I was exposed to in Brockton, in Fall River, in New Bedford, and in Taunton. So if I started rapping at 7, I started performing at 10 years old, and the first time I performed, I was rapping on stage in Taunton, you know? I really did all my footwork in this area because this is where we were all connected, and there's always been a scene here. Yeah. I think that what there hasn't been is venues. Yeah. Like, years ago, we did have a lot of venues in this area, and a lot of folks would go out to them. We were able to host a lot of shows. We had, The Matrix was before my time, but that was out here.
Can I stop you right there real quick?
Yeah.
One of my first gigs promoting was at the Matrix.
Hey, there you go.
In Taunton, right?
Yeah, it's the Roseland Ballroom now.
So my boy Peter Parker was on the radio, and they set up a night with another promoter. And when I first started getting in the music business, I was working the door there and handing out flyers for a club night at the Matrix. Oh, wow. It was wild. It was wild, like an out of control wild.
That's where my father and them was going. My father's young, you know what I'm saying? They was out and
I
about at
probably
that
saw
time.
him.
It wasn't my time.
Probably passed by me at the security checkpoint.
Probably. I'm sorry. I apologize for whatever they did at that time.
Yo, that place was wild, man. It was like, it was jumping, man. Like you couldn't. It was always a line out the door, and you couldn't get everybody in. It was just the spot on a Saturday night, and eventually shit hit the fan, and the whole place, the whole night exploded. Shocker.
Yeah, right.
But
We
yeah,
had that spot. We had Mass Blues and Brockton. We had for a long time. They were doing some really, really dope shows at Mass Blues.
I did a show there.
We had Flair in Fall River. We had Club, I think it was Excess in New Bedford, and these were all really nice spaces that we were able to come and like have shows and have open mics, and like we brought artists out here. Like a couple of years ago, we brought Jadakiss and Styles P to the Shaw Center in Brockton, and the Shaw Center is really like the last place that we have for like a venue like that. So there's always been really dope artists in this area. There's always been a scene here, but I think that we don't have a lot of venues in this area down here. And then when it comes to Boston, we're not from there. So a lot of the times, like even with me, I really just busted into the Boston scene like in the past year, maybe two, right? Really when I started working with Lisa was when I really started to be able to break into the Boston scene, because she is in the Boston scene. So I had a connection, like I had a person to kind of put me in the syndicate. I was doing shows with you too, right? Like I remember doing Cassidy as one with you before. And
really? Oh wow! I forgot about that.
I jumped on somebody else's set, and that was like early Jazzmyn Red.
Yeah.
But we have to find these ways to kind of get into the Boston scene to get seen, because nothing is really left down here anymore for venues or places for us to perform and showcase what we do, and have a sense of like, like glamour to it. Like Excess was a really nice club to do a show at. The Matrix was a pretty dope spot to do shows at. Like we had these nice venues and we don't really have them anymore. So I think once that starts to come down here, like once folks start to get together and create different spaces for shows and showcases and putting efforts into that, I think there will continue to be more of a scene here, but we got to kind of navigate up towards Boston in order to get in front of anybody at this point, and that can be difficult for folks.
It totally can, and I think that's a common scenario for a lot of areas in New England. You know what I mean? That just they have to flood into Boston because it's the hub.
Yep.
And it's not always easy to get your people from your area to drive 40 minutes, 50 minutes to a show. It's just not an easy thing to do. So hopefully that changes. I mean, with COVID, it might be a while.
Yeah.
It's not really. Do you think that Brockton, Fall River, and all these New Bedford, do you think they get a bad rap?
Yeah, I mean, Boston gets a bad rap too. I think we all do in our own respects. But in what sense? What do you mean?
I'm just saying, like, do you think that those areas, like people like that, those places are too dangerous or whatnot? Because I mean, I grew up always hearing, not grew up, but when I was doing shows, they'd be like, "Yo, don't do shows in Brockton. Shit's wild." You know what I mean? Like you're gonna get stabbed. You got all this crazy stuff, and I didn't really listen to it. My business was at the Middle East, but I mean, do you think that that's like a real thing, or is that just a stigma?
I think it's in ways, I think that it's both, right? I think like it would be foolish to deny that there are things that are going on in these cities that are problematic, right? But it would also not be right for me to say that and not say that systemically there are not resources being put into these communities so that these things are not happening. Like there are not creative outlets. Like there are some that exist, but on the level that they could be funded and represented and available to the young people within these communities so that they have an outlet and they have a place to go to channel their energy or to be creative or to be productive and not kind of have some of the issues that we have, like, we could do better, right? But I also think, like, I used to, for perspective, I was a college student, single female, running around doing 3 shows in a night. I would go to I would get out of work. I would go to Brockton, to Mortabeza. Shout out to Mortabeza. I would go to Brockton. I would go to Mortabeza. I would do a show in the underground with like DJ Cyclone and them. I would get out of that show. I would go to Fall River. I would go do a show in Fall River. And then I would go to New Bedford. I would do a show in New Bedford. And I would be by myself, completely by myself. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm still here. So with that being said, like, I think it's fair to say, like, they do get a certain stigma to them. But it's here. And if somebody, you know, artists from here, if they put that footwork in and they continue to go to these spaces and to do their thing and jump on the mic and do it in a way where, like, you know, I was never going nowhere trying to start nothing. I was just trying to be on a microphone. Like, that's what I was doing, you know? So I think they are stigmatized, but I also think that, like, we need more resources from the people who are in power in these cities to do the right thing by the people in these cities, because it's so much creativity here. And, like, shout out to, like, the Sound Lab, who, you know, is really harnessing the creativity of the young people in Brockton with DJ workshops, and they have a performance space, and they just, you know, they have continued to do that. But, like, we need more, and we need more resources, and we need more things to be available so that we can break that stigma and give our young folks a place to channel their energy, you know?
Yeah, totally agree. Now, you talked about systemic. I'm guessing you're applying systemic racism. Am I correct?
Racism, greed.
Yeah, talk about that, because, you know, I know that's an important point that's going on right now. What's your thoughts and your input on how that's affecting things?
I think that's a great question, first of all. I think that there is a lot of opportunity for the people who are in power within these cities to do better by the young people in these areas, to make sure that schools are more resourced than police stations, to make sure that after school programs are available more than, you know, other things that I don't feel are, like, it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on, like, a broken bone, right? Like, it's not going to do anything. Like, you're going to actually create more harm than you are going to create good. Like, we have to really pay attention to the needs of the community, and particularly the needs of the young people within the community, and we need to do better by them. And I don't, like, as a person who's been within the school systems and seen the lack of funding and the lack of resources that are made available to these young people, the lack of people who are made available to these young people. Like, our youth are going through a lot. They're going through a lot of trauma. They have a lot of emotions, and, like, you have one teacher in a classroom and you have no support staff. How does that work, right? Where does the student go when they're having a difficult day? Like, how do we work that out? Like, there's a lot of resources and funding that are not making it to the places that they need to make it to, but instead they're making it to, like, we're going to add 50 police and we're going to cut 150 teachers. That literally makes no sense. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to get more closer to the root, to the young people, to when they're easily affected and when they're easily when they're vulnerable, to make sure that we're helping them to make the right choices and to follow down the right path and giving them the resources to be the best versions of themselves that they can be. And we don't, because of systemic racism, because of greed, because of, well, I'm going to get X amount of dollars to the city, and I'm not going to tell anybody about it until somebody puts it on blast, and now I have to explain myself, which is something that just recently happened in Taunton. They got like $1.9 million. Nobody knew about it. It took a person who was on city council, shout out to CJ, to make it apparent, like, who's running for city council, I should say, to make it apparent, like, yo, Time just got $1.9 million, and y'all didn't know, and they wasn't going to say nothing to you about it or where it's going. And now it's, oh, we're going to have a town hall meeting about this money now.
Yeah.
You got it months ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not getting to the places that it needs to get to, and I think that really needs to stop. And I think people got to get more involved in their communities and demand that, too.
Yeah, it's got to take some action.
Mm-hmm. That was a really long-winded response, but I be going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real thing, man. It's going on all over the world, you know. All over, I shouldn't say the world. I should say, at least I know, in this country. You know, greed has always been the thing. That will exist that has been going on forever, and will keep going on, you know. It's unfortunate. What other thing I said? You're an only child too, right? I'm an only child.
Huh?
I'm an only child as well.
Oh, you are?
So we are fellow only child.
Yes.
So we'll get back to the music, because, you know, I noticed you wrote you have a big influence from Tupac, Lauryn Hill, Alicia Keyes. Those are the big three?
And Queen Latifah. Without her.
Ah, Queen Latifah.
Yeah.
So I take it you're a Tupac over Biggie person?
Absolutely. Hands down.
You're probably getting a lot of arguments about that.
All the time. I think I just had an argument about that yesterday, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, and you know what's funny? Like, on the subject of Tupac, my father was a huge Tupac fan, right? So, like, a lot of people say, like, oh, like, what were you, like, 5 when Pac died? And I'm like, yes, but I was also listening to him at 5. And I remember I was just talking about this the other day, like, whatever I was watching on TV, like, stopped, and the news came on and, like, said that Pac was dead. And I'm, like, bawling my eyes out as a 5, 6-year-old. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew what was going on. But, you know, kind of like a bit of a funny story from my childhood is, like, they would have Tupac on in the car, and I'd be rapping the lyrics in the back seat, and my mom would be like, for example, the political science major, right? Why is Tupac swearing so much? Me. Because he's mad. Because he's angry. And she's like, who is he angry with? I'm like, the government. Like, we used to have these conversations. Like, she would break this stuff down for me on that level. But then on the flip side, you know, I'm in the car with my dad, and, like, we listening to, you know, Gangsta Party. Like, it's just
toss it up. Toss it up in the car.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because I've gone back and forth with it so many times. You know, Pac was first, then came Biggie, and, like, I've always gone back, like, you know, then there's the whole East Coast, West Coast thing. I was Biggie for so long, but now I've kind of gone more in the Pac direction. So it's like, it's weird. It just goes back and forth. They're both so great, but I think if the passion of Pac is just it's tough to tell. You really can't beat it. And he's the most passionate rapper, I think, that we've ever had.
For sure. I think, I love Biggie. Like, listen, I will cut on all about the Benjamins in the car and go off. Like, I know Biggie lyrics. Like, I can rap along to Biggie with the best of them. But for me, it was always like, I think because when I was younger and I was going through so much, like, especially, like I said, like, I had a very racially charged childhood, you know, in school. I was constantly in trouble because somebody called me the N-word, or somebody was like, you know what I mean? Just unnecessary shit that a 5th grader should not have to deal with, right? And we were protected by the adults in the school. So, like, as you're going through these things and you're listening to somebody like Pac, it's like you feel that. Like, you feel like, okay, somebody out in the world, like, understands what I'm going through, or, like, he said what I'm thinking, or he said what I'm feeling, and, like, he did it with such, like, passion. It just made you feel like you weren't alone. And I think that's really what the biggest influence of, like, my music has been from him, was, like, I try to make music that taps into people's emotions, because I feel like that's what Pac really was very, very good at. Same thing with DMX. DMX is in my top 5, hands down, like, God rest. But, like, he could tap into your emotions. He didn't have to be super fly with his lyrics and double, triple on, tanja, hippity hop. He didn't have to do that, because he made you feel something. He could get you emotional. He could make you want to go out and, you know, go to church, or, like, make you want to fight. Like, he could really tap into your emotions, and I think that's what I really loved about listening to Pac as a young person, and why he resonated with me more.
And I think there was a level of honesty, really a strong honesty to it, especially with DMX, which was like really just airing out all his demons completely.
Yeah.
You know, just like I hear it all.
But it is,
You know, and then Pac, you know, speaking about honestly what's going on in the community, and legitimately cared about his community.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of rappers, they're just thinking about self. A lot of people in general, I shouldn't just say a lot of people in general think about self first. Yeah. It's natural, but Pac was like, this is a bigger picture going on here, you know. And once I was mature enough to really kind of understand that took me on another level, you know.
Yeah.
With his music, which I really appreciate now as an older person. I didn't really appreciate it as a 13-year-old. You know, I was just like, he's just wild, you know. But it's like, and you know, Pac did some crazy stuff too. You know what I mean? It wasn't all like, you know. Positive political stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Pac was out here shooting 2 police officers and shit. Like, he was a wild boy.
Yeah, I mean, but there was a level of honesty to that too, you know, like what was going on and how he was raised and how he was brought up. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
You know,
that's another thing too, is like, I learned a lot listening to Pac. Like, Pac would mention a name, like, say he mentioned, like, Geronimo Pratt in a song. I would want to know who that person was. Or, like, 2 Shots in the Dark, now Huey's dead. Who's Huey, right? Like, now I want to know who that person is. So, at a young age, I started to learn about the Black Panther Party through Tupac. Right. And then turn around, as a college student, I went and visited Tanzania and was with members of the original Black Panther Party, and was where Geronimo Pratt actually stayed prior to passing away. You know, like, it was this, I learned so much, and it really, I think, with everything that I learned from him, it turned into wanting to know more, and then it turned into studying Black history to really understand, like, that part of myself, and then it kind of just went from there. So I think, like, me listening to Pac as early as I did really set me on the trajectory to, like, be able to do and say the things that I do now, you know, through my music. But I still rock with Biggie though. Like, I'll still.
I mean they're both in my top 10. You know what I mean? Like 5, 10, whatever you want to say. They're all, you know, this is great, you know. But it's to me, it's just 2 different people. You know, it's like apples and oranges.
The comparison is weird, because it's not, they never really are talking about the same thing in the same way. So it's like we only compare them because they had smoke with each other, right? And that is what the media perpetuated as, like, the East Coast West Coast war. But, like, realistically, they're not the same, in the same space. They don't occupy the same space at all. But they both do what needs to be done when you need it to be done, you know? Right.
So with all that influence that we just talked about thrown into your music, your first album, well, actually, I'm thinking about the first time I heard you was when you released Positive Vibes Only.
Yes.
That's a great song. Right. That's a great song. Is that like 2015? When is that?
2017 is when Writing Her Story came out. So that
was the single. That single out before that? I feel like it was earlier than that.
I think I want to say it debuted on The Source that December. So December 2016, technically.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Produced by The Archetype, I would imagine.
Yep.
That's a great song.
Thank you so much. That was one of those moments where I was just like, there's a lot happening, and I'm going to touch on all of it. Like, let's talk about depression. Let's talk about what's going on in the community. Let's talk about, you know, self-image. Like, we're just going to talk about all of it. And again, like, you know, I hope that you hear me and know that you're not alone. That was the whole premise of that song, for sure.
And the album that surely comes after, what was the inspiration behind that album? Writing Her Story.
Writing Her Story was, so I had made a mixtape, which is the first place that a lot of folks got to know me from. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But after I had made the mixtape, it was like, okay, like, I want to make an album. Like, I want to experience that and see what that's like. And it was really about just like, writing her story is really my life up until that point. So like from the very beginning of the album all the way through to the end is really like a lifetime up until that point that it came out. So when it starts off with, you know, questionable blackness, it talks about kind of being a biracial person and like what that means and what that feels like. I had never heard a song like that, so I figured I should write one since there's biracial people all over the place, right? Like somebody's gonna want to listen to this. And then going into like the phase of like stay grinding and good girl bad attitude, that was in a time that I was going to college, I was working 2 and 3 jobs, I was doing, you know, show after show after show, like living by myself. Like I was grinding for the most part, and I was not a healthy person at the time. I was not really doing well, and that really comes to a head in oh my goodness, why can't I think right now? The next song on the album, which really starts to talk about like not being a healthy person and not making the greatest choices for yourself, and you know, how do we come back from that, which and what can I teach people from these experiences that I had that bring us into If I Had a Daughter, which brings us into Positive Vibes Only, which closes it out to like She's Not, the song She's Not, which is like she's not just another woman. Like it was really just, if you listen to that album, you can hear me and my life. Like you'll know who I am, you know, by listening to that album from first track to last track. And that's really what that was about, was like leaving my stamp here on the world. Like I was here and this is gonna live forever, and people are gonna know me through this album.
Yeah, and that's honesty. We like that. You know, I love honesty in music. And you know, how does it feel to be a female? Well, I'm just gonna say conscious MC. The content's pretty conscious. Mm-hmm. Not even 100%, but I'm just gonna say, you know,
I can do other stuff too. Don't get twisted.
But everything you're talking about is positive and conscious, right? Yeah. So I'm just gonna say that. How does it feel to make positive and conscious hip hop from a female MC's perspective when all the mainstream female MCs are doing the complete opposite? How does that make you feel? I mean, that's got to be frustrating.
It feels necessary.
I like that.
It feels needed because
absolutely.
I can remember growing up and being able to listen to Little Kim, but also being able to listen to Queen Latifah, and being able to listen to Eve, but also being able to listen to MC Lyte. Like there was a antithesis. There was an opposite.
Balance.
There was a balance. And I feel like we don't really have that right now. So I think that
not
it's
important.
Huh? You said not at all. And hey, you know what I'm saying? Like people like what they like, and people want to listen to what they want to listen to, and that's fine. But again, people like what they like, and people want to listen to what they want to listen to, right? Like I feel like we should have balance, and it's okay with me. Like it's okay with me that is what's mainstream right now, because folks need that too. Like, do I put on City Girls when I'm getting my makeup done? Yes, I do, before I go out. Right? But when I'm in the car, I might be listening to Just Another Day by Queen Latifah. You know, I might be listening to Rhapsody. Like that, there's something for everybody. So
like I feel like that's all we have right now on the major levels, Rhapsody. Like I feel like that's the only one. And she's not nearly as big as, you know, the other, you know, the Nicki Minaj's of the world, and you know, everybody, Cardi B's and all that, you know, and I'm not trying to rain on that parade, but it's just very commercial.
A lot.
It's just not conscious or positive, you know, in a lot of ways. It's what it is. Don't get me wrong, but I think we need something a little more down to earth for people that don't want to live that particular lifestyle.
Yeah, and the way that we do that is we lift up the femcs who are doing just that. Like, we continue to lift up the Rhapsodies, right? And we continue to promote them and book them and, you know, push their stuff, or whoever it is. Like, maybe you don't particularly like Rhapsody, but there's another female MC that you like and you like what she has to say. Like, put her out there. Like, that the community helps to help these people rise up. You know what I'm saying? Like, artists, our biggest promoters are you all. Everybody. Anybody who listens, anybody who shares, anybody who wants to meet somebody at a venue. Like, that's how we get to be that, right? And can continue to push to be that, so that there is a balance. But when we don't lift up those MCs, when we don't lift up those artists, they stay where they are. So I think, like, you know, the best thing, and you know, the industry's corrupt. We know that. Like, that's
I was gonna say that. Do you think there's an agenda to push certain females based on their appearance or materialism or selling sex? Do you think that is like a big agenda that the industry does with female MCs?
I think they do it with everybody. I don't think it's just female MCs. I think they do it, you know, they're the ones who fund what is put on the radio, and they're the ones who fund, you know, what is put in front of everybody. And to say that, you know, there's not a scheme of some sort behind it, I don't think is really fair. If you're only seeing the same type of thing in front of you, right? And the other stuff kind of gets pushed to the side, or it doesn't get as much attention. On the flip side, they understand that this is the stuff that sells, right? Like, we can't deny that. Like, this is the type of thing that sells records, that sells on shows. But yeah, I think that it's all the way around. I think that it's with males too. I think that this is why originally the founders of hip hop didn't want hip hop to be commercialized, and they didn't want it to be on the radio, and they wanted to keep it, you know, with themselves, because anything gets corrupted once man touches it, right? Like, it can't be pure and perfect or what it was created to be when too many people put their hands on it. So I think that the industry definitely, you know, has an agenda towards things, definitely puts things out there purposefully with intention. And then you see too, when artists try to do other things, that maybe it's like, okay, I'm done with this version of myself, now I'm trying to be this version of myself. They're like, nah,
it's not going to sell
towards your record deal. Like, we're not taking that album, or we're not taking that song. Sorry.
Well, that's kind of, do you feel like that kind of happened to Lauryn Hill a little bit? Like, they were trying to push her to be more of a sex symbol, and she was like, nah, I don't want to do that, and kind of like went in a different direction. Like, I feel like there was a push for her in the beginning, you know, that they were trying to make her into something that she didn't necessarily want to be or couldn't be.
Yeah.
And she kind of stepped away from it, you know, and she kind of was like, I'm out, you know.
Like, I'm done.
At the peak of her career.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what happened to Lauryn, but it's very clear through her music, even when she did her Unplugged album, that like, the industry is corrupt and I don't want any part of it. So I can assume, like, if not trying to push her to be a sex symbol, like, there was definitely a level of corruption and, you know, negative feelings that existed that made her not want to be part of it. I think that Lauryn Hill is such a creative and such like a free-spirited creative. Like, she, to me, I love her. So, like, you know, I'm like, Lauryn Hill is like, you know, but I think that when you're that type of person and you're trying to be forced to do something that goes against who you are or how you feel or what your method is of your creativity, you can shut down and you cannot want to be a part of it anymore, and you want to say no. So, you know, I think that she didn't want everything that they were trying to make her do at some level. And maybe that was be a sex symbol. Maybe that was just whatever it was just like too much, you know?
Right.
But And I see how she does too. Like, have you seen Lauryn Hill in concert?
I have. I've actually promoted a concert.
Have
I
you,
promoted one
like,
of her
you
shows.
see how, like, she doesn't actually do her songs how they appear on the album?
No, yeah, she doesn't. There's a lot of controversy around her and shows,
Yeah.
and
Well, every time I've seen her, she's been on time. I'll say that.
yeah, I mean, I think she's maybe, I think she's done better now, but there was a time where she had like the worst rep
Yeah.
when it came to shows and just dealing with her in general. And
Yeah.
I don't know how that is now. I can't really speak. The show I saw her with, she was a little late, but it wasn't crazy. But
Yeah. Erykah Badu had me waiting for like 2 hours. But Lauren, I've seen her twice. Both time I noticed that she doesn't do the songs as they appear on her album, and I'm curious if that's so that it's Sony, right? That
she might just get sick of doing them. I mean,
maybe
Bob,
she wants Sony to get paid off of it.
Bob Dylan, who's been around forever, doesn't do any really of his classics at all. Like he just does whatever the hell he wants to do. Maybe
After
it might be
while,
the same theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's give and take though, because it's like, people are coming to see the hits though. You know what I mean? So you got to give them a little bit of that. You can't just say I'm going to do all new material.
Yeah. I've been sad when I want to be singing along to X Factor and I can't at the concert. I'm not gonna lie, but I also understand it. But yeah,
then you got R&B singers like Alicia Keyes, right? Who is still doing her thing. Doesn't seem to be any like industry pressure there to do anything outside of her box or her lane, and she seems to be doing fine. So it can exist, right? But maybe is that just because she's strictly just a talented singer that she can do that, not a rapper? Like, why do you think it's a why?
I'm curious about the contracts. Like, I'm curious because I know, like, I believe Lauryn Hill had like a 3-album contract with Sony or something like that, and she made the one and then was like, I'm done. Like, I'm good with y'all. I wonder if because Alicia Keys' stuff right now is not like I'd say the Element of Freedom was the last time I heard Alicia Keys sound like Alicia Keyes, like that we know from early, right? And then after that, she kind of made a transition into kind of doing her own thing for the most part. So I'm wondering if like her deal was up for the amount of albums she had to make for her label, and then after that she was able to like I'm not sure who she signed to. I should probably know that, but like if the contract ended up being different, or like if she's doing her own thing, if she signed to somebody else now, and like there's a little bit more like freelance of what she can do, because she hasn't had like a major like fallen song like in a minute.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? But they're good. Like I like them, but it's not what
it's not commercial hits.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like
I'm curious.
Which I think that some artists get to that point eventually where you just have your diehard fan base. It grows. It doesn't need to be always in your face commercially. People are when you're that big. I see it with a lot of rock artists.
Alicia Keys put something out. I'm listening. I don't care.
Exactly.
Like, I'm gonna listen to it. Like,
exactly.
I met her actually.
Oh wow.
I met her once. Yeah.
She cool?
My senior year in high school, I met her through my sociology teacher, which is very weird, right? But I had a really difficult year in high school, my senior year. And I had this teacher who, like, at the beginning of the year was like, oh, like, my best friend is Alicia Keys' uncle and blah, blah, blah. And so my extra ass, I'm like, well, if she comes to the concert, like, you need to make sure that I can meet her and da-da-da-da-da. And he's like, yeah, okay. And so I had this just really tough year, and he was like a teacher who just he actually made me want to be a teacher. Shout out to Mr. Costa. He just really like pulled through for me in more ways than like an average teacher would, and just showed up for me. And I remember he wrote to his friend who sent it to Alicia Keys and just kind of talked about me and what I had gone through that year, and she was like, I don't have any more VIP spots open, but I'm gonna open one up so that I can meet Jazzmyn. And I got to go backstage and I got to meet her, and like she like shook everybody's hand, and then I was at the end of the line. I'm crying, right? Of course, because this is like, I've been singing Alicia Keyes songs and being told I look like her since I was like 7.
Nice.
And she comes up to me and she's like, Jazzmyn? And I'm like, yes, right? And she like gave me a hug and everything. It was so cool. I got an autograph from her upstairs.
Wow.
That was a cool moment in my life.
That's one hell of a teacher.
Right? I know.
Shout out that sociology teacher.
Right? Shout out to Mr. Koska. He's the best.
So I want to talk about the follow-up. I want to talk about the follow-up album, Redvolution.
Yes.
What was the inspiration with this one?
So Redvolution actually started to happen. The first song I wrote for Redvolution was Shooter, and that beat was sent to me by Human Torch. Shout out to him. And I had the beat for like 2 years. Like I had the beat for mad long, and I was just like, this beat is so fire, and I don't know what I'm gonna do to it, but I'm gonna do something to it. Like, yeah. And one day it just came to me, and I wrote it, and then that was done. And it stopped. Like my creativity kind of went on a block for a little while, and I took my second trip to Tanzania to visit with Pete and Charlotte O'Neill, who are who Pete used to be the head of the Kansas City chapter of the Black Panther Party, and Mama C, who is his wife, who also was part of the Black Panther Party in Kansas City, original Black Panther Party. And I went to their community center and stayed there for a little while. And while I was there, it's a creative space, right? So there's a lot of like murals and paintings, and like they have a recording studio there, and they teach young people within the community like videography and photography. Shout out to Emma Masai. Recording, producing, engineering, like they do all this stuff there. So I got to really just be immersed in like this really creative space with these revolutionary like idols of mine. And a lot of the music I was hearing, like I remember one day we were driving back to the community center, and Pete's I think like iPod was in the vehicle, and they were like playing music, and it was all like these 50s and 60s songs. And I was really getting like, I was just in listening to that and being inspired in Tanzania. When I came home, I used to have a 2-hour commute from my house to the schools that I worked at every morning.
Damn.
Okay? And like stop and go traffic, dedication, right? My kids, I used to get to school like, listen, if y'all think I don't love you, I don't know what to tell you at this point. I woke up at 5 a.m. to get here for y'all at 8, like, just so we're clear. So up 24 all the way to Brighton, and I kept listening to these songs. I kept listening to 50s and 60s, civil rights songs, civil rights music. And, sorry, my dog was definitely ripping something up behind me. Trouble. And I had like this, like every song I would listen to that I felt inspired by, I was like saving it to a playlist. So I had this like 3-hour long playlist of like all revolutionary 50s, 60s music. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to take those sounds and bring them into now with the like what's currently going on in the world right now. Like, and this was like pre-COVID. I took this trip in 2019. This was pre-COVID. This was pre-everything, right? And so that was really my goal, was to like talk about what's going on in the world right now, bring hip hop of right now to like the 50s and 60s civil rights movement songs of that time period, and kind of mesh that all together. And that's how I kind of came to Redvolution, and just picking up beats between Archetype and Poe and Human Torch are the 3 producers on that album. And like they were giving me everything it needed to give, like back to back. So that's how that album came to fruition, really. I wrote that entire album in my head, in my car.
That's great.
Yeah, so.
So where are you at now musically?
Musically right now, I do have a song that's coming out probably when I return from the UAE because I do want to shoot a video for it. It's very bar heavy. So if any of y'all remember Jazzmyn Red from Caught Red-Handed, the mixtape, it's reminiscent of the mixtape era. But I'm really excited about it. I like to go back to that every once in a while because I don't want to be. I love being a conscious rapper, but I don't want to get pinned into that category, because I feel like I'm versatile and there's a lot of things that I can do. So every once in a while, I gotta remind people like, hey, yes, positive vibes only, but I can also punch you in the teeth. Like, let's just keep that clear.
Well, it's just that level of like rhyming. It's like competitive bar work, stuff like that. I mean, it's important. You can still do that and be conscious, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I do that, but this is just a little different. It's called The Feminist. I am gonna be performing it tomorrow, so everybody will get a little taste of that tomorrow. And really, I'm getting ready to take this trip to the UAE, and I think that through this trip. And mixing, some of the sounds, especially like I am Arabic. I am Arab. So being able to visit.
You are?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So my dad is black. He's black and Cape Verdean. Yep. And my mom is Irish, Lebanese, Syrian, and Egyptian. So I am
hell of a
black,
mix.
white, and Arab. Yes. But everybody thinks I'm Puerto Rican. So.
Do you like Middle East food?
Yes, and I cook Middle East food too, pretty well.
Very healthy. It's probably the healthiest. The Middle Eastern diet's very healthy. When I worked at the Middle East, they used to always say that. Middle Eastern diet is the healthiest diet ever.
It's true.
And then they would guzzle wine.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't seem. Is this part of the Middle Eastern diet?
Yes, it is.
5 bottles of wine,
hummus, Syrian bread. That's it. Grape leaves. But yeah, so like going and exploring that part of myself, I'm really excited for because I think that that's gonna unlock some new creativity for me. Being able to like be in an Arab country and explore that part of like my heritage and my own history. I'm hoping to go to Egypt for a little while before I come back. From UAE because I'm right there, so I might as well pop up in Egypt real quick.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that I'm gonna have something else on the way after I take this little trip.
I gotta ask because you're big into women's rights.
Yes.
How do you feel about going into a Middle Eastern country and then potentially having to wrap up like some women have to wrap up and cover their face or cover their bodies? How does that make you feel? That can't be a great feeling, right?
Well, so I've been to Zanzibar, which is also a very Muslim society, and there are some kind of things there where like you can't wear no sleeves, or they have to be wide, or you have to have like your dresses or skirts come below your knees. Right. And a lot of women there do cover their hair and their face. To me, it's all about respecting the culture. And I know, there's a lot of, I think women feel empowered in different ways, right? And there are quite a bit of Muslim women and Arab women who feel empowered wearing hijab. And there are women who feel empowered letting their hair rock and dressing how they want to dress. I think when women are forced to do a particular thing, that's when it feels uncomfortable. But for me, it's like respect of the culture, respect of the land that I'm on, respect of the place that I'm going to, right, and respect of the custom. So it doesn't feel badly to me, but I think I'll say in general, like, I don't think women should be forced to do anything. I think they should be able to do what they want and live how they want, however they feel the most empowered and feel the best about themselves, whether that's being covered up, whether it's not. Like, we should be able to do whatever we want. But when it's forced, I think it's a different story. But for me, I feel okay about it. I've experienced it before. I haven't had to cover my hair or anything like that in the past, but I think I'm just really excited to like experience the culture and talk to the people and meet the people in these areas and get inspired by them and hear their stories. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Good. I'm glad it's positive vibes over there.
Plus, always. Well, for the most part.
Well,
I would say always.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. But Jazzmyn, so thank you so much for your time, and like we're all looking forward to seeing you perform tomorrow at the Boston Cannabis Festival. Shout out Boston Cannabis Week, Lisa Finelli, Scott, everybody that's been putting this on. You'll be performing with some pretty heavyweights: Freddie Gibbs, Mick Jenkins, Sky Zoo, Terminology, Guru Sanal. It's going to be a hell of a festival tomorrow.
For sure. And tonight, I'll be at the block party. It's my birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you.
I didn't even realize it was your birthday. I
left my 20s behind, but we're not going
to. Oh, so this is the 30-30? You hit the 30-30?
Yes, it is. So we're going to be celebrating at the block party tonight. So pop up. Come hang out with me.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I'd just like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast with Jazzmyn Red, brought to you by Brand Nation Media, Lifted Productions, Barbertime, and Chubby Chick. Thank you, Jazzmyn, and I will see you tomorrow.
Yes. See you then. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.